All right, now we're going to take a look at exercise 26 in chapter 3. This is chapter 3, number 26 in your book. So this is service department and cost allocation. So the whole thing with this is just trying to allocate these costs in the service department to the production department to try to allocate these costs to the product. So in this problem, we have Keenan Mortgage Company has two service departments, human resources and accounting, and two production departments, commercial lending and consumer lending, that relate to its mortgage writing and servicing business. The following data are available from last year. So they give us all of this data. The costs of the human resource department are allocated on the basis of number of employees in each department. So you can see there in the box they give us the number of employees. Whereas the costs of the accounting department are allocated based on the number of financial transactions. So you have to remember that with the service department, it is very different than a production or manufacturing company because these costs for HR and accounting do get allocated to the product. So it's different than we've been seeing with products because we've been saying, what actually makes that product. It has to touch the product. Those are the costs. But service department, it's who's involved in the process making it happen. Like who, not who has actually touched it. So accounting and HR help with the whole consumer and commercial mortgage writing. As they tell us up above, again, they have two service departments, human resource and accounting, and two production departments that relate to its mortgage writing and servicing business. Okay, so all of the departments relate. So for the requirement A, assuming that Keenan Mortgage Company allocates service costs by the direct method. So this learning objective 8, when you go back into your book, there are two different methods for the service department allocations, and it's the direct method and the step-down method. Now, the direct method is going to allocate the cost right from HR and accounting directly, hence the word directly, to the consumer and commercial departments. Whereas the step-down method actually allocates it would take from HR to accounting and then allocate all of accounting to commercial and consumer. And we'll see this very clearly in this problem. So we have the requirement A. In this one, it just says, assume that Keenan Mortgage Company allocates service department costs by the direct method. How much overhead would be allocated for each service department to each producing department? So if you just hopefully are following along in your book, number 26, we can see the service department has HR cost of $300,000 and accounting cost of $240,000. We have to first allocate the $300,000 to the commercial and consumer department. How are we going to do that? Well, it tells us at the very beginning that the costs of HR are allocated on the basis of number of employees. So if we look at the number of employees, we're going to focus on the production department. So commercial has 19 employees and the consumer department has 11 employees. So if we add those up, we get 30 employees. So if we're first trying to allocate the human resource cost, this $300,000, and basically what it's doing is taking it out of HR cost and putting it into the commercial and consumer cost. First, when we're trying to allocate that to the commercial cost, we have 19 employees in the commercial department, and we're going to divide by 30 to get a percentage. So that should come up to about 63.33%. We're going to take this percent, and remember I got these by this 19 is just the commercial number of employees. The 30 is the total number of production department employees. So the 19 employees from commercial and the 11 employees from the consumer. So we get the 63.33%, and all we have to do is multiply this by the cost that we're trying to allocate. So the 300,000 coming from HR, we're going to take 63.33% out of the 300,000, and it comes up to roughly 190,000. So this 190,000 now gets allocated to the production department for commercial lending. So it came out of the HR department and into the consumer department. Oops, I'm sorry, the commercial department. This one's going into commercial. Spell that right for you. I have commercial. Okay, so it's going to be 190 into commercial. So all we're trying to do is allocate right now this 300,000 into both departments. So you could easily, if you wanted to, just say the remainder goes into consumer. So if you took 300,000 minus the 190, you should get 110,000 would be allocated. Or you just have to take the remaining employees. So consumer has 11 employees divided by the total 30 should equal about 36.67%. And the rounding might be a little bit off when we're doing this, but just I'm rounding up. We have 300,000 that we're trying to allocate, so this should come out to 110,000. So when you add both of these up, right, this one plus this one, we're going to get the whole 300,000. So one more time, it's the 300,000 is being allocated out of the human resource department into the production department. And we have to split it up based on consumer and commercial lending because these costs are part of the service process to produce these loans. So they need to be factored into the cost of the loans. So different when we're looking at service department cost allocations. Okay, so that's letter A. Now we're going to take a look at letter B, which is the step-down method. So under step-down, it's a little bit different, but the same concept. We have, so here's B. Again, assuming Keenan Mortgage Company allocates service costs by the step-down method, starting with the HR department, how much overhead would be allocated from each service department to each producing department? So this one's a little bit funny because we're actually going to take it out of HR. Oh, and actually, sorry, I just realized I missed a part in letter A. We never allocated accounting. So let's go back to letter A for a minute and just allocate the accounting part. So the accounting, if you look at the chart, is $240,000. So we have to allocate the 240 to the commercial and lending. It tells us that the accounting department allocates based on the number of financial transactions. So instead of employees, we're going to look at total financial transactions in the consumer and commercial department. So if we look at these together, there was 1,200 transactions for commercial, 2,000 for consumer, all together equaling 3,000. So we're just going to take, for commercial, to get our percent, 1,200 transactions is what they did, divided by the total 3,000. And that should get us to 37.5. So this is the percent that we're going to allocate the 240 for accounting to the commercial department. So we take the 37.5% times the 300,000, and then we're going to allocate $90,000 from the accounting department. Oops, I did that wrong. Sorry. This should be not 300,000. It should be 240,000 from accounting, right? We're trying to allocate the 240,000 from accounting into commercial. So we come up with the percent, and this is just the way that they choose to allocate. The 240 times the 240 gives us 90,000. And then to allocate it to the consumer department, we're going to take 2,000 because they've had 2,000 transactions in the consumer department divided by the full 3,000, and that should come out to about 62.5%. Multiply it by the 240, the whole amount that we're trying to allocate, and that will come out to it should be about 150. So then if we were to add the 90 plus the 150, we're going to get back to the 240. But we're allocating again from accounting, taking it out of the accounting cost and allocating it into the actual production department. Okay? So now let's take a look at B of this problem. And now we're just doing the step-down method. So the step-down method is actually going to have us allocate some to accounting and then take it out of accounting into the other areas. So if we're going to take the 300,000 and now try to allocate it from HR, so we're taking it out of HR, and we're going to allocate it, and this is just the way they do it. It's another way to do an allocation. So each company has different allocation methods. This is the step-down method that they're actually going to have us take it out of HR and put it into accounting, commercial lending, and consumer. So if we're going to take this 300,000 out of HR and put it into accounting, consumer lending, and commercial lending, we're actually going to change our base for percentage because we're going to add accounting to it. So accounting, remember how we're going to allocate HR is based on the number of employees. So accounting has 3 employees, commercial has 19, consumer has 11. So that's 33 employees now that we're looking at. If we first try to allocate to accounting, we're going to do their 3 employees by the 33%. So that's about 9.09% of this 300,000 is going to be allocated to accounting. So that comes out to about 27,273. And then we're going, so this is from HR, this amount goes to accounting. Then we're going to do the same thing with commercial. There were 19 employees there, divided by the 33 is our base. That comes out to 57.58% about. So you should get about, and again I'm rounding, so the numbers might be slightly off, 172,727. This is for commercial. Then we're going to do the same thing for production. We had 11 employees by the 33%. So that should come out to about 33.3%. 33%. So that should be about 100,000 going into consumer. So then this should approximately total the 300,000. So all we've done is allocate this differently based on the step down method. And if you read the definition, step down has you allocate to additional departments. Okay? So we've allocated HR. Now we have to allocate accounting. make this small again. So the allocation for accounting tells us that we have to base it on number of transactions. So now instead of the 240 in accounting, we have the 240 plus the 27,273. So now we have to allocate out of accounting 267,270 is going to go to the commercial and consumer based on the number of transactions. So we're going to do this the same way as we did it before, taking for commercial 1,200 divided by the 3,000. Remember, the 3,000 is the 1,200 plus the 2,000 for commercial and consumer transactions. This comes up to our 37.5%. Allocate that against the 267,270, and you should get about 100,226. And then so that is going to commercial, and then we'll do the same thing for consumer. They had 2,000 transactions divided by the 3,000, gets you about 62.5%. Multiply the 62.5% times the 267,270, and you should get 167,044. So that's the whole problem. It is pretty timely, but the whole purpose is to allocate from service department to production department.